brutal cold, crushing snow, and deadly winds. For 6 decades, mountain men in the Rocky Mountains faced winter conditions that would kill an unprepared person in under an hour. Their solution? Brilliantly designed shelter systems built entirely from wilderness materials that could maintain survivable temperatures through month-long blizzards. Here's the hidden genius behind their life-saving structures. Quick subscribe reminder if you're a regular. Also, where's everyone at tonight? Or morning? Or afternoon? Drop your location and time. Got comments from Seattle to Stockholm last time. The time zone thing never stops being weird to me. Okay, tonight it's the Rocky Mountain winter. But wait, are you comfortable? Like actually comfortable? Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect. Trust me on this one. Your eyes snap open to darkness. The bitter cold hits your face like a slap. The only part of you exposed to the air. You're lying on a raised wooden platform covered with several buffalo robes. Not quite soft, but better than the frozen ground. The temperature inside the crude log shelter hovers around freezing, which is actually a massive improvement from the negative 30 degrees outside. The sound that woke you is unmistakable, the howling winds of a blizzard that just rolled in. That special kind of howl that means you'd be dead in under an hour if you were caught outside. Unlike your cozy bed with its temperature-controlled room, you've got exactly one heat source. The stone fireplace that's already burning dangerously low. If it goes out completely, you might not wake up tomorrow. First rule of mountain living, I can almost hear veteran trapper Samuel Mackenzie saying in my head, "Fire dies, you die." And Sam would know. By 1837, he'd survived 17 Rocky Mountain winters, outlasting hundreds of other trappers who made just one critical mistake. That's the thing about mountain life in the 1820s to 1880s. There were no second chances, no rescue teams, no emergency services, just you, your knowledge, and whatever you could build with your hands. So congratulations, you're a mountain man in the dead of winter, and your very first task of the day is making sure you don't freeze to death before breakfast. The shelter you're in isn't some thrown-together lean-to. It's a carefully engineered survival system. Hold up. Let me paint you a picture of what these places actually looked like. Most people imagine some kind of rustic cabin with a cute chimney and maybe a rocking chair on the porch. The reality? Way more sophisticated and way less comfortable. Think of it as a wilderness life support machine made of logs, stones, and animal hides. You calling this sophisticated, you might be thinking, looking at the rough-hewn log walls and dirt floor? But that's where you'd be wrong. These shelters were marvels of engineering, especially considering they were built with nothing but axes, knives, and pure survival knowledge. The fire in the stone fireplace isn't just for comfort, it's your life support system. Without it, the temperature inside would quickly match the Arctic nightmare outside. You push aside the buffalo robes and swing your legs over the edge of the sleeping platform, your feet finding the rough leather moccasins you left perfectly positioned for this moment. Even the few seconds your feet would spend on the cold dirt floor would be painful. The cold makes your shoulder wound ache, an old injury from a Blackfoot arrow that never quite healed right. It's your personal weather predictor. When it throbs like this, it means the storm is going to be a bad one. You make your way to the fireplace and carefully add a small log from the precisely stacked wood pile beside it. Not too big or it'll smother the coals, not too small or it'll burn out too quickly. This is a science, and getting it wrong means death. Let's back up a bit. How did mountain men even end up in these conditions? I mean, who voluntarily signs up for this frozen hellscape? Between 1820 and 1840, roughly 3,000 men ventured into the Rocky Mountains. They were after one thing: beaver pelts. Back then, beaver fur was like gold, used for fashionable hats in Europe and the eastern United States. A good trapper could make more in one season than a factory worker made in 5 years. The financial incentive was huge, but so was the risk. The mountain men weren't just random dudes with the death wish. They were a mix of French-Canadian voyageurs, American frontiersmen, and European immigrants, all drawn by the promise of fortune and freedom. But freedom in the mountains came with a price, and that price was paid in knowledge, preparation, and sometimes blood. You know what separates the dead trappers from the living ones? Old Sam would say, poking at the fire with a stick. It ain't luck, it's knowing where to build. And he's right. In fact, this is wild. The entire foundation of survival wasn't about how tough you were, or how many guns you had. It was about real estate. Location, location, location. The difference between life and death began with choosing the right spot to build your shelter. One wrong choice, like picking a spot prone to avalanches or in a wind tunnel, and you'd be done before the first big storm. I can't stress this enough. Site selection was literally the most critical decision in mountain shelter construction. These guys weren't just looking for pretty views, they were reading the landscape like a survival manual. What were they looking for? First, natural wind protection. The ideal spot would be on the southeast side of a hill, protected from the prevailing northwest winter winds. Mountain men positioned shelters behind rock formations, dense tree groves, or natural terrain features that could deflect the wind. Wind will kill you faster than cold, Sam would say. Cold takes hours. Wind takes minutes. Wind protection wasn't just about comfort. It could reduce heating requirements by up to 60% while preventing structural damage. That's the difference between having enough firewood for the winter and freezing to death in January when your supplies run out. A cracking sound from outside makes you freeze. Something or someone is moving around near your shelter. Your Kentucky long rifle is propped in the corner, but you don't reach for it yet. Better to listen first. The sound comes again. Just a tree branch breaking under the weight of snow. The tension releases from your shoulders, but only slightly. Living in the mountains means constant vigilance. The next consideration after wind protection was avoiding areas prone to avalanches, flooding, or excessive snow accumulation. You'd be shocked at how many trappers died not from cold or starvation, but from being buried alive in their shelters by avalanches or crushed under collapsed roofs from snow loads. Terrain analysis required understanding how topography affected wind patterns, snow accumulation, and drainage. Mountain men studied slope angles that could trigger avalanches and identified wind channels that created dangerous downdrafts. They recognized terrain features that provided natural protection from prevailing storm patterns. They avoided valley bottoms where cold air settled and ridge tops where wind exposure was extreme. The ideal site offered southern exposure for maximum solar heating, protection from prevailing winds, and access to water sources that wouldn't freeze completely during winter months. I once asked an old-timer who'd grown up hearing these stories firsthand from the last generation of mountain men how they figured all this out. Trial and error, he said with a grim smile. Emphasis on the error. The mountains are littered with the bones of men who got it wrong. And that's the thing. There was no wilderness survival guidebook. This knowledge was earned through generations of mistakes, near misses, and watching what happened to the less fortunate. The successful mountain men were those who learned from others' fatal errors. You add another small log to the fire, watching as the flames catch and grow. The dancing light illuminates the inside of your shelter, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind screams past, occasionally finding a tiny gap in your chinking and sending a knife-like draft cutting through the warm air. Drainage and foundation preparation were next on the priority list. Mountain men selected sites with natural drainage and cleared organic matter that could retain moisture. They created foundation systems that elevated living areas above ground moisture while providing stable support for heavy log construction. Get your floor wet in winter, you might as well dig your own grave, old Sam would say. Proper drainage prevented ice formation that could destabilize foundations and eliminated moisture problems that could create unhealthy living conditions. A wet floor meant wet clothing, wet bedding, and eventually hypothermia. The fire is catching nicely now, and you can feel the heat beginning to push back against the cold. Your fingers, stiff and painful moments ago, start to regain sensation. You flex them carefully, knowing that too much heat too quickly can be almost as painful as the cold. The next critical element was snow load calculations. Yeah, actual engineering calculations, but done through empirical knowledge gained through years of observing how different construction techniques performed under extreme conditions. Mountain men understood that roofs needed to support snow loads of up to 100 pounds per square foot, while maintaining structural integrity during wind events that could create uneven loading patterns. They designed roof angles that promoted snow shedding while maintaining structural strength under maximum loading conditions. Imagine that. No calculators, no structural engineering degree. Just knowledge passed down and refined through observation and sometimes deadly consequences. You hear a voice in your head, something your mentor told you years ago when you first came to the mountains as a greenhorn. Build your roof too flat. Snow piles up. Build it too steep. Wind tears it off. There's a sweet spot in between, and you better find it before the first storm. Structural engineering principles were applied using traditional knowledge that had been tested through generations of mountain survival. Mountain men didn't call it engineering, but that's exactly what it was. Log selection focused on species that provided maximum strength-to-weight ratios, proper seasoning that prevented cracking and settling, and construction techniques that created interlocking joints capable of withstanding extreme temperature cycling and structural loads. They preferred lodgepole pine and Douglas fir for their strength characteristics and resistance to temperature-related movement. Not just any tree would do. Green wood would shrink as it dried, creating gaps in the walls. Wood that was too dry might be brittle and crack. Each log was selected with purpose. You know what most new fellows get wrong? Sam once asked me, Ondas, not waiting for an answer. They think any log'll do, but choosing the wrong wood is like choosing the wrong horse. It'll let you down when you need it most. Now, the foundation systems. Mountain men built foundations using stone and timber construction that created stable, well-drained bases for log structures. They elevated living areas above snow level, provided thermal breaks that prevented ground heat loss, and created stable platforms that could support heavy log walls without settling or shifting during freeze-thaw cycles. Stone foundations were carefully fitted without mortar, allowing for thermal movement while maintaining structural stability. This was crucial because the extreme temperature variations in some mountains would cause rigid structures to crack and fail. This is the part that always gets me. These guys understood the concept of thermal expansion and contraction centuries before many formal engineers incorporated it into building codes. They knew that a structure that couldn't flex with temperature changes would eventually tear itself apart. The blizzard outside intensifies, the wind howling like a pack of wolves. You're grateful for the solid walls surrounding you, for the knowledge that went into selecting each log, each stone. Your life depends on decisions made months ago, when the weather was fair and winter seemed distant. Material procurement and preparation required understanding which local materials provided the best construction properties for extreme weather applications. Mountain men selected trees during specific seasons when sap content was lowest, seasoned logs using natural drying techniques that prevented cracking, and prepared construction materials using hand tools that created precise joints and connections. Basically, there was a right time of year to cut trees, a right way to dry them, and a right way to shape them. Get any part wrong, and your shelter might fail midwinter. You settle back onto your sleeping platform, pulling the buffalo robes around you. The fire crackles pleasantly now, casting a warm glow throughout the shelter. Outside, the blizzard rages, but in here, you're safe. For now. As you drift back towards sleep, you think about the knowledge and work that went into this shelter, the careful site selection, the precise engineering, the materials chosen for their specific properties. None of it was random. All of it was essential. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you'll need to check the roof for snow load, inspect the chinking between the logs, and gather more firewood. Because winter in the mountains doesn't forgive carelessness or complacency. This is just the beginning of understanding how mountain men survived the deadliest winters on Earth. Their knowledge of thermal engineering, heating systems, and heat retention was just as sophisticated as their structural engineering, perhaps even more so. The fire pops and sends a spark dancing across the dirt floor. It dies quickly, but not before reminding you of the central truth of mountain life. Fire means life, and in the mountains life is never guaranteed. You wake again several hours later, not to the howling wind, but to the bone-deep cold that tells you the fire has burned down to embers. The dark is absolute, that special kind of pitch black that only exists in remote places without electric lights for hundreds of miles. Your breath hangs visible in the air. The buffalo robes have kept you from freezing, but just barely. The storm outside hasn't let up. If anything, it's intensified. You can hear the wind's low moan as it searches for any crack in your shelter's defences. Fire dies, you die. Old Sam's words echo in your head again. Time to move, fast. You swing your legs over the edge of the sleeping platform, sliding your feet into those fur-lined moccasins you strategically placed before sleeping. The floor is cold enough to steal the heat from your body through your feet in minutes. The fireplace is down to a bed of glowing coals, still alive but barely. This is the most critical moment of the night. If you don't get that fire going again, and quickly, the temperature inside will plummet to match the deadly cold outside. What most folks don't realize is that creating and maintaining life-sustaining temperatures in these remote mountain shelters required a sophisticated understanding of heat generation, distribution, and retention using only natural materials and primitive heating systems. There were no thermostat dials to turn, no backup generators, just your knowledge and whatever you could build with your hands. Thomas Whitaker, a mountain man who survived the brutal winter of 1832, once described it this way: "Out there, your fireplace ain't just for comfort. It's the beating heart of your shelter. Build it wrong, and you'll freeze with a roaring fire burning." You kneel by the fireplace, feeling the faint heat from the remaining coals. The design of this fireplace isn't random. It's the result of generations of trial and error, where errors meant death. Fireplace construction was the heart of mountain shelter heating systems. But these weren't the decorative, smoke-belching fireplaces you might find in some modern cabins. Mountain men built fireplaces using local stone carefully selected for its ability to withstand extreme temperature cycling without cracking. You grab several small pieces of kindling from the neatly stacked pile beside the fireplace. Not random sticks. These are specifically prepared and sorted by size to create the perfect progression from spark to flame. You arrange them carefully over the coals, creating tiny air spaces between each piece. Proper fireplace design included combustion chambers sized for efficient burning, chimney systems that created proper draft while preventing heat loss, and thermal mass systems that stored heat during active burning and released it slowly over extended periods. "The trick ain't just making fire," old Sam once told a greenhorn who was struggling to stay warm despite burning through firewood at an alarming rate. "The trick is making the fire work for you. Most fools just make smoke and warm the sky. You blow gently on the embers, coaxing them back to life. A small flame appears, dancing along the edge of a piece of kindling. You feed it carefully, gradually adding larger pieces as the fire grows. Chimney design and construction required understanding draft principles, heat retention, and structural stability under extreme temperature conditions. Mountain men built chimneys using stone construction that could withstand thermal cycling, created proper draft angles that ensured efficient combustion, and incorporated heat exchange systems that captured waste heat before it escaped through the chimney. Wait, hold up. Did you catch that? Heat exchange systems. Yeah, these primitive mountain men were building heat exchangers into their chimneys. By running the smoke through chambers of stone or clay before it exited, they extracted maximum heat from every bit of precious firewood. "See how this chimney narrows here, then widens there?" Sam would explain, pointing to the carefully shaped structure. "That ain't random. That's so the heat can't escape too fast. Makes your wood last twice as long." They understood that proper chimney design could increase heating efficiency by up to 40% while preventing dangerous backdrafts and carbon monoxide accumulation. Get it wrong, and you'd either freeze or suffocate. The fire is catching properly now, growing stronger. You add a few more pieces of wood, slightly larger this time. The warmth begins to push back against the cold, and you can feel sensation returning to your fingers and toes. Picture this. It's 35 below zero outside. The wind is howling at 60 miles per hour, but inside a well-built mountain shelter, the temperature hovers around a comfortable 65 degrees. How the hell is that possible with just a fireplace and no insulation as we know it today? The answer lies in thermal mass systems. Mountain men used stone and clay construction that could absorb heat during active burning periods and release stored thermal energy over many hours after fires died down. You look at the large stones that make up the fireplace. They're not just structural, they're functional. During the day, when the fire burns hot, these stones absorb that heat. At night, when the fire burns lower, they release it back into the shelter. Natural thermal batteries. Mountain men positioned thermal mass strategically throughout shelters to create even heat distribution, while maximizing heat storage capacity, using materials that were readily available in wilderness environments. They calculated thermal mass requirements based on shelter size, insulation levels, and expected heating loads during extreme weather conditions. "You want stones that hold heat," Sam would say, tapping a particular rock with his knuckle. "Not all rocks are the same. Some hold heat like a miser holds gold. Others let it slip away like water through fingers." And he was right. Different types of stone have different thermal mass properties. Soapstone, for example, has excellent heat retention. Granite is decent. Sandstone, not so much. Mountain men knew which stones would best serve as heat batteries long before the science of thermal conductivity was formally understood. The fire is roaring now, filling the shelter with blessed warmth and golden light. You can see your breath less and less as the temperature rises. The chill retreats from your bones. What about heat distribution? It's not enough to have a hot fire in one corner if the rest of your shelter remains freezing. Heat distribution systems use natural convection and radiant heating principles to move warm air throughout shelter spaces. Mountain men designed interior layouts that promoted air circulation while preventing heat loss through poorly sealed openings. Strategic placement of thermal mass and heating elements created convection currents that distributed heat evenly throughout living spaces. You notice how the sleeping platform is positioned, elevated above the floor but not too close to the ceiling. This is intentional. Since warm air rises, the highest point in the shelter would be the warmest. Too high, and you'd sweat while sleeping. Too low, and you'd freeze. The platform is placed at exactly the right height to maintain comfortable sleeping temperature. 3 feet off the ground, Sam would say. Any higher and you'll bake like bread. Any lower and you'll freeze like meat. They understood that proper heat distribution could eliminate cold spots and reduce overall fuel consumption by up to 30%. Every piece of firewood saved meant one more day of survival when storms made gathering more impossible. Now let's talk about combustion efficiency, because not all fires are created equal. Mountain men maximized it through proper fuel selection, fire management techniques, and combustion chamber design that extracted maximum heat from available fuel while minimizing smoke production and heat loss. You arrange the logs in the fireplace in a specific pattern, not the teepee shape most casual campers use, but a carefully structured arrangement that allows for proper airflow and sustained burning. "Look at these city folks," Sam would laugh, watching a group of eastern hunters struggle with their smoky, inefficient campfire. They think any stick'll burn the same. There's wood that heats, and there's wood that just makes smoke. Know the difference or freeze to death with a roaring fire. Mountain men understood which wood species provided the best heat output, how to season and prepare fuel for optimal burning, and how to manage fires for continuous heat production. They knew that hardwoods like oak and maple provided long-burning coals, while softwoods like pine provided quick ignition and high heat output. You think about the wood pile stacked against the wall. Each piece was selected, cut, and stored with purpose. The smaller pieces of pine for quick, hot fires. The larger chunks of oak and maple for overnight burning. Nothing random about it. Particularly strong gust of wind makes the shelter creak. Something shifts on the roof. Probably snow sliding off thanks to the steepened roof angle. The sound makes you think about how much wood you have left. Fuel management systems ensured adequate fuel supplies during extended storms when fuel collection was impossible. Mountain men calculated fuel consumption rates for different weather conditions, established fuel storage systems that kept wood dry and accessible, and developed fuel preparation techniques that maximized heat output while minimizing fuel consumption during critical periods. Your eyes drift to the woodpile. You estimate you have enough for 3 days of continuous burning at the current rate. If the storm lasts longer than that, you'll need to venture out no matter how dangerous to gather more. Always have 3 times the wood you think you'll need was one of Sam's most repeated lessons. Weather don't care about your plans. Mountain men typically stored enough seasoned wood to last through month-long storms with emergency reserves for extended weather events. Running out of firewood mid-blizzard was a death sentence, plain and simple. Outside, the wind howls again, finding some tiny gap in the chinking between logs and sending a knife-like draft cutting through the warm air. You make a mental note to find and seal that gap when there's more light. Heat retention techniques included insulation systems, air sealing methods, and thermal barriers that prevented heat loss while maintaining adequate ventilation for safety and air quality. Wait, insulation. But I said earlier, these shelters didn't have insulation as we know it today. That's true. They didn't have fiberglass or foam, but they absolutely had insulation. Mountain men used natural insulation materials, including animal fur, dried grass, and clay chinking that created effective thermal barriers while allowing controlled air exchange that prevented carbon monoxide buildup. You run your hand along the wall nearest your sleeping platform. Between the logs, the chinking isn't just clay, it's a mixture of clay, dried grass, and in some spots, animal hair. All materials that trap tiny pockets of air. The same principle modern insulation uses. Tight walls make warm nights, Sam would say, carefully packing a mixture of clay and grass between logs, but never too tight. A shelter that don't breathe will suffocate you silent in your sleep. They understood that proper insulation could reduce heating requirements by up to 70% while maintaining comfortable living conditions. The difference between burning 1 cord of wood per week versus 3 or 4, which often meant the difference between survival and freezing. The fire is burning perfectly now, radiating blessed heat throughout the shelter. You sit on the edge of the sleeping platform watching the flames dance. Outside, the blizzard continues unabated, but in here, you're warm. For now. What about when you needed to be away from the fire? Radiant heating systems used heated stones, metal objects, and thermal mass elements that could store heat during active burning periods and release radiant energy over extended periods. You notice several smooth, round stones placed near the fire. These aren't random. Later, you'll heat these stones in the fire, wrap them in scraps of hide, and place them in your bedding before sleeping. Instant bed warmers that will radiate heat for hours. Mountain men heated stones in fires and placed them strategically throughout shelters to provide localized heating. They used metal objects as heat sinks that stored and released thermal energy, and designed sleeping areas that maximized radiant heat exposure while maintaining safety margins. A memory flashes through your mind. Sam teaching you how to survive if your fire went out completely. Heat rocks, he said, placing several fist-sized stones at the edge of the fire. If your fire dies and you can't get it going again, put these hot rocks in a circle around you. They'll keep you alive till morning. The fire snaps and pops as a pocket of sap ignites in one of the logs. The dancing flames cast shifting shadows on the walls. Despite the howling storm outside, there's a surprising peacefulness in here. Humans have been gathering around fires for warmth and protection for hundreds of thousands of years. There's something primal and comforting about it. Morning will come eventually, the storm will pass. But for now, your world has contracted to this small, warm space carved out of the deadly winter wilderness. You add another log to the fire, watching as the flames curl around it. There's an art to fire maintenance. Not too much wood at once or you'll smother it. Not too little or it'll burn out too quickly. This is the rhythm of mountain life. The constant vigilance. The knowledge that survival depends on 1,000 small decisions made correctly. You stretch your legs toward the fire, feeling the heat seep into your tired muscles. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, checking the roof for snow load, inspecting the walls for new drafts, possibly venturing out for more firewood if the storm breaks. But for now, you've mastered the most crucial survival skill of the mountain man, creating warmth in the face of killing cold. Another log shifts in the fire, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. You think about the mountain men who came before you, who figured out these heating systems through brutal trial and error. How many froze to death before they learned the proper way to build a chimney? How many suffocated from carbon monoxide before they understood the importance of ventilation? We stand on the frozen corpses of those who got it wrong, Sam would say grimly, whenever he taught a new survival technique. Not the most cheerful teaching method, but it drove the point home. The heat from the fire has made you drowsy again. You bank the fire carefully, arranging the logs in a specific pattern that will allow it to burn slowly but steadily for hours. Another skill learned through generations of life or death winters. You return to your sleeping platform, arranging the buffalo robes around you. The platform itself is another example of mountain ingenuity. Raised off the cold ground, positioned at the right height to catch the rising warm air, but not so high as to be in the hottest part of the shelter. As you drift back towards sleep, you think about all the knowledge that goes into something as seemingly simple as staying warm. The fireplace construction, the chimney design, the thermal mass, the heat distribution, the combustion efficiency, the fuel management, the heat retention, the radiant heating, none of it random, all of it essential. All of it learned through generations of harsh experience in the unforgiving mountain winters. The fire crackles softly, a sound as comforting as a lullaby. Outside, the blizzard continues its assault, but it can't reach you now. You've mastered the art of creating warmth in one of the coldest places on Earth, using nothing but the materials nature provides, and the knowledge passed down by those who survived before you. This knowledge wasn't just comfort, it was life itself. And tomorrow, you'd need to apply an equally sophisticated understanding of weatherproofing to ensure your shelter remained effective as the blizzard continued. The science of weatherproofing, protection systems and environmental control would be just as crucial as the heating systems you've mastered tonight. But that's a challenge for tomorrow. For now, wrapped in buffalo robes with the fire burning steadily, you've accomplished the mountain man's first daily victory, surviving the night. The soft light of dawn seeps through the single small window, a square opening covered with an oiled animal bladder that lets in light but keeps out wind. You've slept better than expected thanks to the steady heat from the fireplace and the buffalo robes. But something's not right. There's a dampness to the air that shouldn't be there. You sit up, instantly alert. Dampness in a mountain shelter during winter isn't just uncomfortable, it's deadly. Where there's dampness, there's a breach in your weatherproofing. And where there's a breach, killing cold can follow. A drop of water lands on your hand. You look up. The ceiling is showing a wet spot, small but growing. The snow on the roof is melting from the heat of your fire, finding some tiny gap in your roof and seeping through. If left unchecked, it'll soak your bedding, your clothes, and eventually you. In sub-zero temperatures, wet means dead. The Henderson family learned this the hard way. During their first Rocky Mountain winter of 1842, ice formed inside their poorly sealed cabin near what's now Colorado Springs. Despite maintaining a constant fire, they nearly died from hypothermia. The father, Jonathan Henderson, described it in his journal. "We burned every stick of wood we had, and still the cold penetrated like a knife. The moisture from our breath froze on the inside walls. We huddled together, shivering, watching ice form on our blankets." 3 years later, that same family's shelter remained completely dry and comfortable, even during the worst blizzards. What changed? They mastered the science of weatherproofing. You swing your legs over the edge of the sleeping platform and grab a buckskin shirt, pulling it over your head. The fire needs tending first, survival priority 1. But that leak will need fixing before it gets worse. Creating weatherproof barriers that could exclude wind, moisture, and cold while maintaining structural integrity required sophisticated understanding of materials science and environmental protection systems. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. You stoke the fire, adding more wood. The flames rise, pushing back the morning chill. Now for that leak. You grab a small wooden ladder leaning against one wall and position it under the damp spot. Climbing up, you can see where the problem is. A small section of the roof covering has worked loose, allowing melting snow to seep through. Wall construction and chinking systems created weatherproof barriers that excluded wind and moisture while maintaining structural strength. Mountain men used log construction techniques that created tight-fitting joints, chinking materials that sealed gaps without compromising structural flexibility, and weatherproofing treatments that protected wood from moisture damage while maintaining breathability that prevented condensation problems. "You know what kills most greenhorns their first winter?" Sam asked you once. "Not cold, not Indians, not even wolves. It's the gaps between their logs. Tiny little spaces they never noticed in summer that turn into deadly wind tunnels come January." You reach up and touch the wet spot. The water is cold against your fingers. Outside, the blizzard has calmed somewhat, but snow is still falling heavily. The temperature might be around 10 below zero, warm by Rocky Mountain winter standards. Looking at the roof construction from inside, you can appreciate the care that went into it. Split logs overlapping like shingles, with moss and clay packed between them for insulation and waterproofing. Normally it would shed water and snow perfectly, but something's shifted. Log preparation and fitting techniques created tight joints that minimized air infiltration and heat loss. Mountain men selected logs with consistent diameters, shaped joining surfaces using hand tools that created precise fits. and used traditional joinery methods that created interlocking connections capable of withstanding structural movement during temperature cycling. You remember helping build this shelter last summer. The care taken in selecting each log, stripping the bark, shaping the joints. Nothing was random. See how these logs fit together? Sam demonstrated, showing you how to notch the ends. That ain't just for looks. Each log sits tight against the one below it. Less gaps means less chinking. Less chinking means fewer leaks. He was right. Proper log fitting could reduce air infiltration by up to 80% while maintaining structural integrity under extreme loading conditions. Every percent mattered when the temperature dropped to 40 below. You climb down the ladder and move it to one side. You'll need to go outside to fix the roof properly, but first you need the right materials. From a corner of the shelter, you gather some pre-made chinking, a mixture of clay, grass and animal hair that's been soaking in a wooden bucket to keep it pliable. Chinking materials and application methods sealed gaps between logs using natural materials that provided weatherproofing while allowing controlled thermal movement. Mountain men used clay-based chinking compounds mixed with organic fibers that created flexible seals, applied chinking in multiple layers that provided redundant weatherproofing, and maintained chinking systems through regular inspection and repair that ensured continued effectiveness. Good chinking's like good stitching, Sam told you once watching you repair a seam in your buckskin shirt. Too loose, stuff gets through. Too tight, it tears when stretched. Gotta be just right. They knew that proper chinking was essential for maintaining interior temperatures and preventing moisture infiltration. A well-chinked wall could mean the difference between a comfortable winter and a fatal one. You pull on your heaviest coat, wrap a woolen scarf around your face, and put on thick mittens. Going outside in a blizzard, even briefly, requires proper protection. You grab a wooden shovel and a small bag of repair materials. Taking a deep breath, you open the door, a thick wooden slab hung on leather hinges. Instantly, a blast of cold air rushes in, along with a swirl of snow. You step outside quickly, pulling the door shut behind you. The cold is shocking, a physical force that seems to knock the breath from your lungs. Even through your layers, you can feel it searching for any gap, any weakness. This is the cold that kills, that freezes flesh solid in minutes. Snow has drifted nearly to the roof on the windward side of your shelter, creating a natural insulation barrier. On the leeward side, where you need to work, the snow is only about 3 feet deep. You wade through it, circling to the back of the shelter. Roof systems were designed to shed snow and water, while providing adequate insulation and structural strength to withstand extreme loading conditions. Mountain men built roofs using steep angles that promoted snow shedding, waterproof barriers that prevented moisture infiltration, and insulation systems that prevented heat loss while avoiding ice dam formation that could cause structural damage. Looking up, you can see the problem. A small section of the roof covering has been lifted by the wind, creating a gap where melting snow can seep through. It's not a major breach yet, but left unattended, it could grow worse. You use the shovel to clear snow from the base of the shelter, creating a stable platform for your ladder. Then you climb up, your fingers already stiffening in the bitter cold despite the mittens. Roof construction techniques used overlapping materials that created multiple waterproof barriers while maintaining structural strength under snow loading. Mountain men used split shingles, bark sheets, and hide coverings that created layered waterproofing systems, incorporated proper drainage that prevented water accumulation, and designed roof structures that could support maximum expected snow loads while maintaining weatherproof integrity. The repair is straightforward, but must be done quickly before the cold becomes dangerous. You press the loose section back into place, then apply fresh chinking around the edges to seal it. The clay mixture is already starting to stiffen in the cold, but you work quickly, your hands moving with practiced efficiency. 3 minutes, Sam's voice echoes in your head. That's how long you got to work bare-handed in this cold before your fingers stop working. Count it out. Plan your moves. Get back inside before your hands become useless clubs. You're working with mittens, which helps, but still the cold is penetrating. You finish the repair, pack up your materials and hurry back inside, your face stinging from just those few minutes of exposure. Back in the shelter, the warmth wraps around you like an embrace. You hang your snow-covered coat near the fire to dry and warm your hands, careful not to get them too close to the flames. The rapid temperature change from extreme cold to heat can be almost as painful as the cold itself. You check the ceiling. The wet spot has stopped growing, which means your repair is holding. Given a day or two, the dampness will dry out completely thanks to the heat from the fire. This small incident highlights the constant vigilance required for mountain survival. Even a tiny breach in weatherproofing could spiral into a life-threatening situation within hours. Moisture management systems prevented condensation, ice formation, and humidity problems that could create dangerous living conditions and compromise structural integrity. Mountain men understood that moisture control required balancing ventilation needs with heat retention requirements, while preventing condensation that could freeze and create dangerous ice accumulation inside living spaces. Wet kills you 3 ways, Sam explained during your first winter. It steals your body heat, it ruins your gear, and it rots your shelter from the inside out. He wasn't exaggerating. A wet shelter could quickly become uninhabitable in winter, leaving you exposed to the elements. Death would follow shortly. You move around the interior of your shelter, checking for other signs of moisture or drafts. Near one corner you feel a slight movement of air, another small gap in the chinking that needs repair. You gather some of the chinking mixture and press it into the gap, smoothing it with your fingers. Ventilation systems provided fresh air and prevented carbon monoxide poisoning, while minimizing heat loss during extreme cold conditions. Mountain men designed ventilation systems that created controlled air exchange, prevented dangerous gas accumulation, and maintained air quality without compromising heating efficiency or creating uncomfortable drafts that increased heat loss. A shelter that don't breathe will kill you quiet in your sleep, Sam warned, but too much breathing lets all your heat escape. Gotta find the balance. Mountain men used adjustable ventilation openings that could be modified based on weather conditions and heating requirements. A small flap near the peak of the roof could be opened or closed to control airflow and prevent the buildup of deadly carbon monoxide from the fire. You check this ventilation flap now, making sure it's adjusted properly. Open enough to allow smoke and gases to escape, but not so open that it wastes heat. Like everything in mountain life, it's a careful balance. The repair work has made you hungry. From a leather pouch hanging on the wall, you take some strips of dried venison, jerky tough enough to make your jaw ache but packed with the protein and fat needed to maintain body heat in this climate. As you chew, you think about the door to your shelter. Door and window systems created secure closures that excluded weather while providing access and natural lighting when conditions permitted. Mountain men built door systems using multiple barriers, weather sealing techniques, and emergency closure methods that could maintain weatherproof seals even during extreme wind and temperature conditions. Your door is a solid piece of split log, hung on leather hinges and secured with a wooden latch. Around its edges, strips of fur create a seal that blocks drafts. When closed, it fits so snugly that even the fiercest wind can't find a way through. A door ain't just a hole with a cover, Sam lectured when teaching you shelter construction. It's a weak point that needs reinforcing. Make it solid as a wall but able to open when needed. Mountain men used thick wooden doors with multiple sealing layers, created airlocks that prevented heat loss during entry and exit, and designed emergency closure systems that could seal openings during extreme weather events. Some larger settlements even had primitive mud rooms, small entry chambers between the outside door and the main living space. This created an airlock that prevented the rush of cold air from entering the main shelter when the outer door was opened. Your shelter is too small for such luxuries, but the principle is the same. Minimize heat loss through necessary openings. The small window, covered with that translucent animal bladder, lets in enough light to see by without creating a significant heat loss point. Some mountain men used mica sheets when available, which were more durable but harder to come by. Weatherproofing maintenance included regular inspection, preventive repairs, and seasonal preparation that maintained shelter effectiveness throughout extended winter periods. Mountain men developed maintenance schedules that addressed common failure points, repair techniques that could be performed during severe weather, and preventive measures that avoided weatherproofing failures during critical survival periods. An hour of maintenance in good weather saves a day of misery in bad, was another of Sam's frequent sayings. The old mountain man had a quote for everything, it seemed, but each one encapsulated vital survival wisdom. You finish your jerky and take a drink of cold water from a wooden cup. The morning routine of inspection and repair complete, you can now focus on other tasks. The blizzard is still blowing outside, which means gathering more firewood isn't an option yet. Instead, you'll use the time to maintain your gear, another critical survival task. From under your sleeping platform, you pull out a pair of snowshoes that need repairs. The babiche, the rawhide webbing, has stretched in places and needs tightening. Without properly functioning snowshoes, travelling through deep snow would be nearly impossible, limiting your ability to hunt, trap, or gather firewood once the storm passes. As you work on the snowshoes, the shelter grows warmer with the strengthening fire. You remove your heavy wool shirt, working in just your buckskin undershirt. Despite the raging storm and sub-zero temperatures outside, the interior of your shelter is now a comfortable 65 degrees, a testament to the effectiveness of the heating and weatherproofing systems working in concert. This comfort isn't luxury, it's survival. The ability to dry clothing, maintain dexterity in your hands, and allow minor injuries to heal all depended on creating and maintaining a habitable microclimate within your shelter. The snowshoe repairs are meticulous work, requiring focused attention and nimble fingers. You heat a bone awl in the fire, using it to punch holes in the rawhide for new lacing. The smell of heating bone mixes with the wood smoke, creating that distinctive odour of a mountain man's winter shelter. Outside, the wind's howl has diminished somewhat. The storm might be starting to break. Through the small window you can see that the snowfall has lightened, though it's still coming down steadily. You finish the snowshoe repairs and set them aside to let the rawhide dry properly. Next, you check your hunting rifle, cleaning it meticulously. In the damp air of the shelter, metal rusts quickly. A malfunctioning rifle could mean starvation once your food stores run out. As you work, you think about the weatherproofing systems that are keeping you alive, the careful log construction, the meticulously maintained chinking, the strategically designed roof with its precise angle for snow shedding, the solid door with its multiple ceiling layers, the small covered window that admits light without wasting heat, the adjustable ventilation system that prevents carbon monoxide buildup while minimizing heat loss. None of it random, all of it essential, all of it the product of generations of hard-won knowledge passed down from one mountain man to another, often at the cost of many lives. The day passes in a rhythm of maintenance tasks and fireplace tending. By late afternoon, the storm has weakened considerably. Through the window you can see patches of clear sky appearing between the clouds. The worst has passed, at least for now. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, digging out from the fresh snow, assessing any damage to the exterior of your shelter, gathering more firewood before the next storm hits. But for today, your weatherproofing has held. Your shelter has protected you from conditions that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. As evening approaches, you add more wood to the fire, preparing for the coming night. The temperature will drop further after dark, testing your shelter's defenses once again. But you're confident in the systems you've built and maintained. You settle back onto your sleeping platform, watching the firelight dance on the log walls. Outside, the wind has died down to an occasional moan. The snowfall has stopped. The worst of the blizzard has passed. But winter in the Rocky Mountains is long and unforgiving. This storm was just one of many that will test your shelter and your survival skills before spring arrives. The emergency protocols, crisis management, and survival procedures that mountain men developed will be your guide through the challenging months ahead. You close your eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but for now your weatherproofing has held, your heating system is functioning, and you've survived another day in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The maintenance of your shelter's weatherproofing wasn't just a one-time task, but an ongoing process that required constant vigilance and immediate attention to even the smallest issues. In the mountains, a small problem ignored could quickly become a fatal one. You wake to the sound of silence. After days of howling wind, the quiet is almost unsettling. Pale blue light filters through the small window. Dawn in the mountains after a blizzard. The air in your shelter is cold, but not deadly so. The fire has burned down to embers during the night, but the thermal mass of the stone fireplace has kept the temperature from plummeting. Your first thought is about the roof repair from yesterday. You look up at the spot that was leaking. It's dry now, your quick fix having held through the night. Your second thought is more pressing. The woodpile is getting dangerously low. With the storm past, you need to venture out today to replenish your fuel supply. In the mountains, running out of firewood midwinter is a death sentence. But first, you need to restart the fire. You slide from beneath the buffalo robes, the cold air biting at your exposed face. Your moccasins wait beside the sleeping platform. and you slip them on before your feet can touch the cold dirt floor. Kneeling by the fireplace, you carefully add kindling to the remaining embers, gently blowing until flames appear. You add progressively larger pieces of wood until the fire catches properly. Only then do you turn your attention to preparing for the day ahead. The snow will be deep after the blizzard, snowshoes essential. The temperature will be brutally cold, proper layering critical. And the threat of another storm is always present, timing crucial. This day-to-day existence required constant vigilance. But what about when things went really wrong? What about when primary systems failed or conditions exceeded normal survival parameters? Martha Caldwell faced exactly that scenario during the blizzard of 1856. When their chimney collapsed under snow load and their primary heating system failed, she implemented backup heating procedures, emergency ventilation protocols, and survival techniques that kept her family alive for 6 days until the storm passed and repairs could be made. Her diary entry from that harrowing week reads, "The crash came at midnight, stones and snow pouring down where our hearth had been. The cold rushed in like a hungry wolf. I gathered the children in the corner furthest from the breach, piling every buffalo robe and blanket upon them." Then I remembered Jacob's lessons about the emergency heating. Jacob was her husband, who had learned emergency protocols from veteran mountain men. Those protocols saved his family's life while he was away hunting. You pull on layers of clothing, buckskin leggings, a heavy wool shirt, a fur-lined coat. You wrap a wool scarf around your face, leaving only your eyes exposed. Thick mittens protect your hands. Properly dressed, you can survive even 40 below temperatures for the time it takes to gather wood. Before heading out, you check your emergency supplies, items set aside specifically for when things go catastrophically wrong. Emergency heating systems provided backup warmth when primary heating systems failed due to fuel shortages, equipment failure, or structural damage that eliminated normal heating capabilities. Mountain men developed emergency heating techniques using body heat conservation, emergency fuel sources, and alternative heating methods that could maintain life-sustaining temperatures during heating system failures. A small metal container holds your fire-starting kit: flint, steel, charcloth and tinder, all kept dry and ready for immediate use. A separate cache contains emergency rations: pemmican, jerky and dried berries that require no cooking. These could keep you alive for days if your main food supply was compromised. Sam once told you about surviving when his cabin roof collapsed under a record snowfall. "Thought I was done for," he said, his eyes distant with the memory. Fireplace buried under snow and timber, temperature dropping fast enough to watch your breath freeze. That's when I remembered what old Bill Williams taught me about body heat shelters. Body heat conservation techniques used clothing systems, bedding arrangements, and shelter modifications that maximized human heat retention during heating system failures. Mountain men used layered clothing systems that trapped warm air while allowing moisture transfer. Shared sleeping arrangements that combined body heat for maximum warming effect, and shelter modifications that concentrated heat in smaller areas when primary heating was unavailable. "Cleared the smallest corner I could," Sam continued, "used the fallen timbers to make a tiny shelter within the shelter, hung blankets to make the space smaller still. Pulled on every stitch of clothing I owned. Then I just sat there, huddled in that little cocoon waiting out the storm. Body puts out heat, small space keeps it close. Survived 3 days like that until I could dig out and make repairs. The old mountain man's experience is a textbook example of body heat conservation in an emergency. He understood that proper body heat conservation could sustain life for extended periods when other heating sources were unavailable. You open the door and step outside. The cold hits like a physical blow, instantly numbing any exposed skin. The snow has drifted nearly to the roof in places, transformed by wind into sculptural shapes. The sky above is clear and painfully blue, the sun glittering off the snow with blinding intensity. First, you need to clear a path from your door. You grab the wooden snow shovel hanging beside the entrance and begin to dig. The snow is deep but powdery, making the work less strenuous than it could be. Still, in this cold, any exertion makes you sweat. A dangerous situation. You pace yourself, taking breaks to prevent overheating. With a path cleared, you strap on your freshly repaired snowshoes and head toward a stand of trees about 100 yards from your shelter. These will provide the firewood you need, but you must select carefully. Dead standing timber is best. Already seasoned, but not yet rotted. Green wood burns poorly and produces excessive smoke. Wood that's been on the ground too long absorbs moisture and becomes difficult to light. Emergency fuel procurement and preparation techniques provided alternative fuel sources when primary fuel supplies were exhausted or inaccessible due to severe weather conditions. Mountain men knew how to locate and prepare emergency fuel sources, including deadfall wood, bark, and organic materials that could provide heat during fuel shortages. As you gather fallen branches and cut smaller dead trees with your axe, you remember another of Sam's stories, a time when he was trapped by an avalanche that buried his woodpile. "Had to get creative," he chuckled. "Started burning everything wooden that wasn't structural. Tool handles, spare snowshoe frames, even boiled pine cones for the little heat they gave off. Survived by thinking beyond regular firewood." Mountain men developed fuel preparation techniques that could be performed inside shelters during severe weather and understood which materials provided the best heat output under emergency conditions. When standard fuel wasn't available, they improvised with whatever would burn. You've gathered a good armload of wood, enough for a day or two. You'll need to make several more trips, but it's best not to overexert yourself in this cold. Better several small trips than one exhausting one that leaves you sweating and vulnerable to rapid heat loss. As you turn back toward your shelter, you notice something that makes you pause. Fresh tracks in the snow about 50 yards to your right. Wolf tracks, and big ones. A reminder that the cold isn't the only danger in these mountains. You hurry back to your shelter, unload the wood, and make 2 more gathering trips before deciding you have enough to last several days. The wolf tracks weigh on your mind. A hungry wolf pack in winter can be bold enough to attack a lone human. Back inside, with the door securely latched, you add wood to the fire and warm your hands. The shelter has cooled during your absence, but quickly warms again as the fire builds. You remove your outer layers, hanging them near the fire to dry any sweat that accumulated during your work. The wood-gathering expedition successful, your thoughts turn to other potential emergencies. Structural failure protocols addressed emergency procedures when shelters suffered damage from snow loads, wind damage, or other structural failures that compromise shelter integrity. Mountain men developed emergency repair techniques, temporary reinforcement methods, and backup shelter options that could provide protection when primary shelters became uninhabitable. You scan the roof and walls of your shelter, checking for any signs of stress from the recent snow load. The roof's steep angle has allowed most of the snow to slide off, preventing dangerous accumulation. The walls show no signs of bowing or cracking. Your shelter has weathered the blizzard well. But what if it hadn't? What if, like Sam's cabin or the Caldwell family's chimney, some critical part of your shelter had failed during the storm? Emergency repair techniques used materials and tools that were readily available during severe weather conditions to address structural failures that threatened shelter integrity. Mountain men developed repair methods that could be performed during storms, used emergency materials including spare logs, stones, and organic materials to reinforce damaged structures, and created temporary fixes that could maintain shelter effectiveness until permanent repairs could be made. In one corner of your shelter, you keep emergency repair supplies, extra chinking material, rawhide cordage, a small saw, and other tools that would allow you to make critical fixes even in the worst conditions. Being prepared for structural failure could mean the difference between life and death. When my roof started to go, Sam told you once, I didn't panic. Grabbed those support poles I kept for just such an occasion, braced the sagging section, packed snow on top of hides to seal the gaps. Wasn't pretty, but it kept me alive till the storm passed and I could make proper repairs. He understood that emergency repairs often meant the difference between survival and death during extended storms. The key was having both the materials and the knowledge to implement rapid solutions. But what if the damage was too severe for repairs? What if the shelter became completely uninhabitable? Backup shelter construction provided alternative protection when primary shelters became uninhabitable due to structural damage, fire, or other disasters. Mountain men knew how to construct emergency shelters using minimal materials and tools, created backup shelter sites that could be activated quickly during emergencies, and developed emergency shelter techniques that could provide life-sustaining protection, using only materials available during severe weather conditions. The most common backup was the snow cave, a survival shelter that could be created in deep snowdrifts using nothing but a knife or small shovel. Properly constructed, a snow cave could maintain an interior temperature near freezing even when outside temperatures dropped to 30 or 40 below zero. Cold, but survivable. Sam described building one when his first mountain cabin burned down in the winter of 1829. Dug into a big drift on the lee side of a hill, made an entrance tunnel that curved up into a sleeping chamber, about the size of a large dog kennel. Body heat alone brought the temperature up enough to keep from freezing to death. Lived in that snow hole for 11 days until I could build a proper shelter. Wasn't comfortable, but I'm here to tell the tale. The old mountain man's story highlights a critical aspect of mountain survival, always having a backup plan. Primary shelters might fail. Primary heating systems might become compromised. In those situations, having the knowledge to quickly implement alternatives often meant the difference between life and death. You stoke the fire again, adding a larger log that will burn for hours. The interior of your shelter is warm now, almost comfortable, but your mind remains on emergency preparations. Emergency ventilation procedures prevented carbon monoxide poisoning and maintained air quality when normal ventilation systems became blocked or compromised during severe weather events. Mountain men understood emergency ventilation techniques that could provide fresh air without compromising heat retention, while preventing dangerous gas accumulation that could kill sleeping occupants. Carbon monoxide was a silent killer in winter shelters. Produced by fires in enclosed spaces, this odorless, colourless gas could build to lethal levels if proper ventilation wasn't maintained. Many inexperienced mountain travellers died in their sleep, poisoned by their own heating fires when snow blocked chimney outlets or ventilation gaps. Sam lost a friend that way in the winter of 1832. Found Jim still in his bedroll, looking peaceful as if he was sleeping, but the snow had drifted over his roof vent during the night. Fire burned fine, but the smoke had nowhere to go. Never woke up. After that tragedy, Sam became obsessive about ventilation, always ensuring multiple air paths existed in any shelter he built. "Rather be cold than dead," he'd say when checking ventilation openings during storms. "You check your own ventilation system now, the small adjustable vent near the peak of the roof and the chimney outlet. Both are clear, allowing proper air exchange without excessive heat loss. Still, you make a mental note to check them again before sleeping tonight. Vigilance keeps you alive." Food and water management during emergencies ensured adequate nutrition and hydration when normal procurement and preparation methods became impossible due to severe weather conditions. Mountain men developed emergency food storage, water procurement techniques, and nutrition management that could sustain life during extended emergencies when normal food systems were unavailable. From beneath your sleeping platform, you pull out a small leather pouch containing your emergency food cache, separate from your regular supplies and never touched except in dire circumstances. Inside is pemmican, a concentrated mixture of rendered fat and dried meat that can sustain life for extended periods in small amounts. Also jerky, dried berries, and a small pouch of salt. Enough to keep you alive for a week or more if regular hunting and trapping became impossible. Emergency food systems included preserved foods, emergency rations, and alternative food sources that could sustain nutrition during extended survival situations. Mountain men stored dried meat, preserved vegetables, and emergency food supplies that could provide adequate nutrition for weeks without resupply. "A man who enters winter without emergency food stores is begging the mountains to kill him," Sam would say when teaching you about preparation. "Weather don't care if you're hungry. Storms don't wait for your stomach to fill." They understood food rationing techniques that could extend food supplies during emergencies and knew how to procure alternative food sources, including tree bark, roots, and other emergency foods that could prevent starvation during extended survival situations. Sam once survived 2 weeks on pine bark and roots when a grizzly destroyed his food cache. "Tasted like hell. Gave me the runs, something fierce. But had enough nutrition to keep me moving until I could hunt again. Mountains provide if you know where to look." Water procurement and management during emergencies ensured adequate hydration. When normal water sources became frozen or inaccessible due to severe weather conditions, mountain men developed techniques for melting snow and ice safely, conserving water during shortages, and maintaining water quality during extended emergencies. Beside your fireplace sits a small metal pot, your snow-melting vessel. In winter, liquid water was often hard to come by, with streams and springs frozen solid. Melting snow provided the only reliable source, but it had to be done properly to avoid wasting precious fuel. "Rookie mistake is trying to melt snow in an empty pot," Sam explained. "Burns the pot and wastes fuel. Always start with a small amount of water in the bottom, then add snow gradually. Uses less wood that way." They understood that water management was critical for survival and developed systems that could provide adequate hydration even during the most severe weather conditions. The day passes in a rhythm of fire tending, meal preparation and gear maintenance. As evening approaches, the temperature outside plummets again. Inside, your shelter remains warm thanks to the fire and the sophisticated heating and weatherproofing systems working in concert. You check the ventilation one last time before settling onto your sleeping platform for the night. The fire is carefully banked to burn slowly through the hours of darkness. Your emergency supplies are organized and accessible should anything go wrong during the night. As you pull the buffalo robes around you, you think about the emergency protocols that mountain men developed, not out of paranoia, but out of respect for the unforgiving reality of winter in the high country, the heating backup systems, the structural repair techniques, the alternative shelter options, the ventilation safeguards, the food and water management strategies. None of it random, all of it essential, all of it the product of hard-won experience in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Sleep comes easily in the warm shelter, your body tired from the wood-gathering expedition. Outside, the temperature continues to drop, the stars brittle and bright in the clear mountain sky. But inside, protected by systems refined through generations of mountain men, you rest securely. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but with the emergency protocols you've learned and the supplies you've prepared, you're ready to face whatever the mountains throw at you. This resilience, this readiness for disaster, was the true hallmark of the mountain man's approach to wilderness survival. Your breathing deepens as sleep takes hold. The fire crackles softly in the stone fireplace. For tonight at least, all is well in your small outpost of warmth in the frozen wilderness. Morning comes with brilliant sunshine reflecting off the snow, flooding your shelter with light through the small window. The fire has burned low overnight but not out, a testament to your careful banking of the coals before sleep. The temperature inside hovers just above freezing, cold enough to see your breath but not cold enough to be dangerous. You rise and tend to the fire first, as always. The routine of mountain life centers around this essential task, maintaining the heat source that stands between you and death. With fresh wood added and flames crackling, you begin your morning routine. A week has passed since the major blizzard. You've maintained your shelter, gathered sufficient firewood, and tended to necessary repairs. But mountain life is never truly secure. New challenges emerge constantly, and today brings one you've been anticipating. The loneliness is starting to wear on you. Most people don't realize that physical survival was only part of the mountain man's challenge. Psychological survival techniques addressed mental health challenges during extended isolation and extreme stress that could compromise decision-making and survival effectiveness. You sit by the fire, sipping a bitter tea made from pine needles, not tasty, but rich in vitamin C that prevents scurvy during winter months when fresh food is scarce. Through the window, you can see the vastness of the mountain landscape stretching to the horizon. Beautiful, but also isolating. You haven't seen another human face in nearly 2 months. Sam called it the winter madness. Seen good men crack like thin ice, he told you during your first mountain winter. Mind starts playing tricks, starts talking to themselves, then answering back. Different voice for each. Had a partner once who ended up arguing with himself so fierce he couldn't tend to survival needs. Found him frozen come spring thaw. surrounded by plenty of firewood he never bothered to burn. Mountain men understood psychological survival methods that maintained morale, prevented panic, and sustained rational decision-making during extended survival situations that tested mental as well as physical endurance. They developed mental exercises, activity routines, and psychological techniques that could maintain mental health during months of isolation and extreme stress. You reach for your journal, a handmade book of paper pages bound with rawhide. Writing was one such mental exercise. Not all mountain men were literate, but those who were often kept detailed journals, not just for practical record-keeping, but as a way to externalize thoughts, maintain a sense of purpose, and create a dialogue when no conversation partners were available. You record the date, weather conditions, and recent activities. Then you write more personal reflections, memories of home, plans for spring, observations about the changing light as winter progresses. The act of writing focuses your mind, preventing the aimless wandering of thoughts that can lead to despair. Keep your hands busy and your mind will follow, Sam advised. Idle hands make for crazy thoughts in the winter isolation. So you follow his advice. After writing, you move on to carving, another common mountain man pastime that served both practical and psychological purposes. From a piece of pine, you're fashioning a new handle for your skinning knife. The work requires concentration, keeping your mind engaged on the immediate task rather than dwelling on the isolation or the dangers outside. The psychological toll of mountain winters was rarely discussed openly among the men. Showing mental weakness was as taboo as showing physical weakness. But the old-timers found ways to teach coping strategies to those who would listen. Sam's teachings come back to you as you work. Set daily goals no matter how small, maintain routines, talk out loud sometimes, even to yourself, just to hear a human voice. Find beauty in small things. Remember that spring always comes eventually. These weren't just folksy sayings, but sophisticated psychological techniques developed through generations of trial and error in extreme isolation. The mountain men who survived multiple winters were those who mastered not just physical survival, but mental resilience. The carving complete, you set aside the new knife handle to dry and cure. Next, you check your traps, another daily routine that provides both practical benefits and psychological structure. You have 3 set within 100 yards of your shelter, positioned to catch snowshoe hares that might venture out after the storm. Bundling up against the cold, you step outside. The temperature has risen somewhat with the sun, perhaps to around 0 degrees, almost balmy by winter mountain standards. The snow crunches beneath your snowshoes as you make your rounds. The first trap is empty, so is the second, but the third holds a prize, a fat snowshoe hare, its white winter coat blending almost perfectly with the snow. Fresh meat is a luxury in winter, both nutritionally and psychologically. The successful hunt lifts your spirits immediately. Back in the shelter, you skin and clean the hare with practiced efficiency. Nothing is wasted. The meat will be food, the fur will be saved for mitts or hat lining. Even the bones will be used for tools or boiled for broth. Mountain life demands complete utilization of every resource. As you work, your thoughts turn to another aspect of winter survival that's rarely discussed in romantic tales of mountain men, the need for human connection. Communication and rescue protocols provided methods for summoning help, and coordinating rescue efforts when emergencies exceeded individual survival capabilities. Mountain men established communication systems, emergency signaling methods, and mutual aid agreements that could coordinate assistance during life-threatening emergencies that required outside help. You think about Tom Jenkins, whose cabin lies about 15 miles to the east. Before winter set in, you and Tom established a simple communication system. A column of smoke from a specific ridgetop would signal an emergency requiring assistance. If either of you saw the signal, you'd come with supplies and help. Such informal networks were common among mountain men, despite their reputation for rugged individualism. They understood that some situations exceeded one person's capacity to handle alone. A broken leg, severe illness, or major shelter damage might require outside help to survive. Mountain man who thinks he needs nobody is usually the first to die, Sam told you bluntly. Pride makes for shallow graves out here. So far this winter you haven't needed to signal Tom, nor have you seen a signal from him. But the knowledge that the system exists provides psychological comfort beyond its practical value. You set the hare meat to cook in a stew pot over the fire, adding dried berries and pine nuts gathered last fall. The rich aroma fills the small shelter, another psychological boost that counters the monotony of winter rations. While the stew simmers, you take out your map, a hand-drawn representation of the surrounding 50 miles, showing water sources, good hunting grounds, the locations of other trappers' cabins, and potential danger areas like avalanche slopes. You study it daily, another mental exercise that maintains spatial awareness and reinforces your connection to the larger landscape beyond your immediate surroundings. On the map, you've marked several rendezvous points where scattered mountain men agreed to meet in case of emergencies, or when spring allowed easier travel. These locations were carefully chosen for accessibility from multiple directions and natural resources that could support a group temporarily. The annual rendezvous was a larger-scale version of this system, a gathering of mountain men, Native Americans, and supply caravans that provided not just trade opportunities, but crucial social connection that sustained mental health through the isolation of winter months. They were wild affairs, with trading, competitions, storytelling, and plenty of whiskey when available. But the smaller, emergency-focused meeting points were equally important for survival. They created a safety net in a wilderness where official rescue systems didn't exist. Always know where to find help and how to reach it, Sam instructed, and always be ready to provide it when others need. Mountains don't care about debts, but mountain men do. The stew is ready. You ladle some into a wooden bowl and eat slowly, savouring the rich flavour of fresh meat after weeks of jerky and pemmican. Good food is another psychological boost, a reminder that even at the depths of winter, small pleasures remain available. After eating, you clean your bowl with snow brought in earlier, then return to your journal. Now you record information about the successful trap, the preparation of the hare, and the condition of the surrounding area as observed during your brief excursion. These practical notes might seem mundane, but they serve as both future reference and as a way to mark the passage of time. Another psychological technique for managing long isolation. As afternoon fades toward evening, you begin your daily story cycle. Mountain men often memorized dozens of stories, poems, and songs that they would recite to themselves during winter isolation. Some kept books when available, reading the same texts repeatedly as both entertainment and mental exercise. You recite aloud a story Sam taught you, the tale of Hugh Glass, who survived a grisly attack and crawled over 100 miles with terrible injuries to reach safety. The story's theme of resilience against overwhelming odds resonates in the winter wilderness. Speaking aloud serves multiple purposes. It exercises your voice after days of silence, fills the shelter with human sound, and reinforces the narrative of survival against hardship that helps maintain psychological resilience. As darkness falls, you light a small oil lamp made from animal fat with a juniper wick. The flickering light complements the fire's glow, creating a warm ambience that fights against the psychological weight of the early winter darkness. You check your supplies, another daily routine that serves both practical and psychological purposes. Knowing exactly what resources you have available provides security and allows for effective planning. You have enough food for 3 more weeks at current consumption rates. Enough firewood for 4 days before you'll need to gather more. Water is unlimited thanks to the abundant snow. Your shelter remains sound, the repairs from after the blizzard holding well. This accounting of resources is calming, a way of asserting control in an environment where so much remains beyond human influence. Evening brings another ritual, weather prediction. You step outside briefly, reading the sky, feeling the air, noting the behavior of the few animals active in winter. Low clouds moving in from the west suggest another storm might be approaching, though likely not as severe as the last blizzard. You'll need to prepare nevertheless, perhaps gathering additional firewood tomorrow if conditions allow. Back inside, you add wood to the fire for the night. The ritual of banking the coals for slow burning through the darkness is both practical survival and a psychological transition to the quieter evening hours. Mind needs rhythm, same as body, Sam explained. Morning rituals to start the day, evening rituals to end it. Keeps your thinking ordered when the world around you is chaos. You sit on your sleeping platform, repairing a tear in one of your buckskin shirts by the light of the lamp. The repetitive motion of the bone needle through the leather is almost meditative, another activity that occupies both hands and mind. Night has fallen completely now, the darkness outside absolute. Inside your shelter, the bubble of warmth and light creates a profound contrast, a microcosm of safety in the vastness of the winter wilderness. This contrast itself can create psychological strain if dwelled upon too much. The realization of how small and vulnerable human existence is against the scale of the mountains and the power of winter. Mountain men developed specific mental techniques to manage this existential aspect of wilderness living. Rather than fighting against the immensity and power of nature, they learned to see themselves as part of it, a small but integral element in the natural world, rather than an alien presence within it. "You ain't separate from these mountains," Sam told you once, sitting outside his cabin as a summer thunderstorm approached. "You're part of them, same as the trees and the elk and the udones. Sooner you understand that, sooner you'll find peace here instead of fear." That perspective helped transform the psychological experience of isolation from lonely abandonment to harmonious solitude, a crucial distinction for mental health during the long winter months. You finish the repair on your shirt and set it aside. The fire burns steadily, the flames dancing hypnotically. You allow yourself to watch them for a while. Another simple meditation that mountain men used to quiet racing thoughts and maintain mental balance. From beneath your sleeping platform, you take out a small wooden flute, another psychological tool common among mountain men. Music provided emotional release, creative expression, and a connection to cultural identity that helped maintain mental resilience during isolation. You play a simple tune, one Sam taught you during your first winter together. The notes fill the shelter, somehow making the space seem larger while simultaneously more intimate. The act of creating music, even simple melodies, stimulates parts of the brain that can grow dormant during isolation, helping maintain cognitive flexibility and emotional regulation. Man who can make music never truly alone, Sam said when he first showed you how to carve a flute. Got the whole world of sound for company. The tune complete, you set the flute aside and prepare for sleep. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, weather to predict, firewood to gather, traps to check, maintenance to perform. The cycle of survival continues without pause. As you settle beneath the buffalo robes, you practice another psychological technique Sam taught, gratitude inventory. You mentally list the positives in your current situation: a sound shelter, adequate food, working tools, health and strength, knowledge of survival techniques, connections with other mountain men like Tom, skills to obtain what you need from the environment. This practice counteracts the tendency toward negative focus that isolation can exacerbate. By consciously identifying elements to be grateful for, you reshape your perception of your situation from deprivation to sufficiency. Man who counts his blessings finds more of them, Sam would say. Man who counts only troubles soon finds nothing else. Sleep approaches now, your body tired from the day's activities, your mind calmed by the evening rituals and psychological techniques honed by generations of mountain men who faced these same challenges of isolation and winter survival. The fire pops softly. Outside, the wind begins to rise slightly, perhaps bringing the storm you predicted earlier. But inside your shelter, protected by physical systems and fortified by psychological resilience, you drift towards sleep. Another day of mountain winter survival complete. The mountain men who survived decades in the Rockies understood that shelter construction was both science and art, requiring technical knowledge of engineering and material science combined with intuitive understanding of how natural systems work together to create protection from the deadliest weather on Earth. But they also understood that the shelter of the mind was equally important, the psychological techniques and perspectives that protected mental health during extreme isolation and stress. Physical survival and psychological resilience were inseparable components of the mountain man's existence. As consciousness fades, you remember Sam's words from long ago. Mountains will test everything you are, body, mind, and spirit. Pass those tests, and you'll find freedom like nothing else on Earth. Tomorrow will bring new tests, but for now, secure in your shelter and in your mind, you sleep. Dawn breaks with the soft pink and gold light that only exists in high mountain country. The storm you predicted arrived overnight but proved milder than expected. Just enough new snow to freshen the landscape without creating dangerous conditions. Your shelter kept you warm and protected through the night, its systems working exactly as designed. You rise and tend to the fire, adding wood from the carefully stacked pile beside the hearth. Morning light filters through the small window, catching dust motes dancing in the air. The routine of mountain life continues, predictable, necessary, grounding. As you prepare a simple breakfast of jerky and pine needle tea, your thoughts drift to the journey that brought you here. What compelled men to leave relative comfort and safety for this harsh existence? For some, it was the promise of beaver pelts and the fortune they could bring. For others, the freedom from society's constraints. For many, including yourself, it was something less definable, a calling to test oneself against the raw elements, to live by wits and skill in a place that forgave no mistakes. Most folks never understand why we do it, Sam told you once, gazing out over a mountain valley in summer. They think it's about running from something. Maybe for some it is, but for the real mountain men, it's about running to something, to a life that's hard but honest, where every day you earn your right to see the next sunrise. Today marks your 73rd day alone in the high country. The isolation that once seemed overwhelming has become familiar, almost comfortable. The daily rituals of survival have created a rhythm that carries you forward, day by day, through the heart of winter. After breakfast, you step outside to check conditions. The temperature has risen slightly, perhaps 15 degrees below zero, positively balmy compared to recent weeks. The fresh snow sparkles in the morning sun, pristine and unmarked. You take a deep breath, the cold air burning your lungs slightly but invigorating your body. Today's tasks include checking traps, gathering more firewood while conditions are favourable, and repairing a small draft you've noticed developing near the door. The constant maintenance of shelter systems was never ending in mountain life. A small problem ignored could quickly become life-threatening. You strap on snowshoes and make your rounds of the traps. No catches today, but the tracks in the fresh snow suggest game is moving again after the recent storm. You reset the traps in promising locations, your movements efficient and practiced after months in the wilderness. Firewood gathering comes next. You select dead standing trees of appropriate size, cutting them with your axe and dragging them back to your shelter on a small hand sled. The work is strenuous but warming, and you're careful not to overexert to the point of sweating. Wet clothing in this environment can be deadly even after returning to shelter. By midday, you've stockpiled enough wood for several days and return to your shelter to warm up and rest. Inside, the temperature is comfortable thanks to the steady fire. You remove your outer layers and hang them near the hearth to dry any accumulated moisture. As you sit by the fire, warming your hands around a cup of hot pine needle tea, you reflect on the sophisticated systems that mountain men developed to survive in this unforgiving environment. These weren't just random techniques, but carefully engineered solutions refined through generations of trial and error. The mountain men who survived decades in the Rockies understood that shelter construction was both science and art, requiring technical knowledge of engineering and materials science, combined with intuitive understanding of how natural systems work together to create protection from the deadliest weather on Earth. Their techniques, refined through generations of trial and error where mistakes meant death, created shelter systems that were more reliable and effective than many modern alternatives. The mountain shelters weren't just structures, but complete life support systems designed to maintain habitable conditions in an environment that could kill in minutes. You notice a small gap in the chinking near the door, the draft you identified earlier. You gather some of the pre-prepared chinking mixture and carefully repair the gap, smoothing it with practiced fingers. This constant vigilance against the intrusion of cold and moisture was essential to survival. A shelter ain't ever truly finished, Sam would say. It's a living thing that needs constant care, same as your own body. Neglect it, and it'll fail you when you need it most. The afternoon passes in quiet productivity, small repairs, tool maintenance, preparation of materials for future needs. These tasks serve both practical survival and psychological well-being, keeping both hands and mind occupied during the long winter days. As evening approaches, you step outside again to observe the weather signs. The sky remains clear, the stars beginning to appear as daylight fades. Tomorrow should bring favourable conditions for hunting, a welcome opportunity to supplement your food stores with fresh meat. Back inside, you add wood to the fire and prepare a simple dinner. The rituals of evening begin, banking the fire for slow burning through the night, checking that your water supply won't freeze, ensuring ventilation remains adequate but not excessive. Sitting on your sleeping platform, you take out your journal and record the day's activities. This written record serves multiple purposes: practical documentation of successful techniques, psychological processing of the day's experiences, and a legacy of knowledge that might someday help others survive these same mountains. As you write, you think about the generations of mountain men who came before you, each contributing to the collective wisdom that now keeps you alive night after night in conditions that would kill the unprepared within hours. Names like Jim Bridger, John Coulter, Hugh Glass, Jedediah Smith. Men who ventured into the unknown and returned with knowledge that would shape the understanding of wilderness survival for centuries to come. Their legacy lives in every well-built shelter, every properly constructed fireplace, every effectively designed ventilation system. We stand on the shoulders of frozen corpses, Sam would say grimly. Every technique I'm teaching you was probably bought with some poor soul's last breath when they got it wrong. Honour that sacrifice by getting it right. The gravity of that statement has never left you. The knowledge you passed down wasn't academic but existential. Each lesson potentially the difference between life and death in the high country winter. You close your journal and set it aside. The fire crackles softly, the flames casting dancing shadows on the log walls. Despite the harsh conditions outside, there's a profound peace in this moment. The satisfaction of having created a pocket of safety and comfort in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. From beneath your sleeping platform, you take out a small piece of wood you've been carving gradually over recent weeks. It's taking the shape of a mountain lion, the details emerging bit by bit with each evening's work. This creative outlet serves as both psychological balance and a connection to the long tradition of mountain men who filled winter evenings with handcraft. As you work, adding detail to one paw with the tip of your knife, you remember another of Sam's stories, about a trapper named William Johnston, who survived the winter of 1832 when temperatures dropped to 50 below zero for weeks on end. Johnston's shelter was a marvel, Sam told you, his eyes distant with the memory of stories passed down to him. Built it into a south-facing hillside, used the earth itself as insulation on three sides, had a stone fireplace so perfectly designed that he could maintain 70 degrees inside while burning half the wood most trappers used. Man knew things about heat flow and air circulation that fancy engineers are just figuring out now. Johnston's innovations saved his life during that brutal winter and became part of the collective knowledge of mountain men, each generation adding refinements, identifying weaknesses, developing solutions to problems that arose as they pushed deeper into the mountains and faced increasingly extreme conditions. You set aside the carving and prepare for sleep. The fire is carefully banked, the ventilation checked, water positioned where it won't freeze overnight. These evening rituals aren't just practical necessities, but psychological transitions, signaling to body and mind that another day of survival has been successfully completed. As you settle beneath the buffalo robes, the weight and warmth enveloping you immediately, you think about how different your experience is from the romantic notions many outsiders hold about mountain life. There's nothing romantic about the constant vigilance, the endless work, the knowledge that one mistake could mean death. And yet, there's a profound satisfaction in this existence, the direct connection between your knowledge, your effort, and your survival. The simplification of life to its most essential elements. The deep understanding of natural systems that can only come from immersion in the wilderness. Mountains will strip you down to who you really are, Sam told you during your first winter together. No pretending up here, no hiding behind society's masks, just you, facing yourself honestly maybe for the first time. You've found truth in those words over the months alone in the high country. The mountains have indeed stripped away pretense, leaving only the essential core of who you are. There's clarity in that revelation, painful at times but ultimately freeing. Outside, the wind moves through pine boughs with a gentle sighing sound. The temperature continues to drop as night deepens, but inside your shelter, maintained by systems refined through generations of mountain men, you remain warm and secure. Sleep approaches, your body tired from the day's physical work, your mind calmed by the evening's quieter activities. The transition to unconsciousness comes easier now than in your early days in the mountains, your nervous system having adapted to the rhythms of wilderness life. As you drift towards sleep, you reflect on the legacy of the mountain men, not just their practical knowledge of shelter construction and survival techniques, but their philosophy of self-reliance, their respect for the power of nature, their understanding of humans' place within rather than apart from the natural world. This wisdom, earned through harsh experience in unforgiving environments, offers insights relevant beyond the mountain context. In a world increasingly removed from direct interaction with natural systems, the mountain men's intimate understanding of those systems provides a valuable perspective. Their shelters weren't just structures but expressions of a relationship with the environment, working with natural principles rather than against them, using local materials in ways that maximize their inherent properties, creating systems that were elegant in their efficiency and profound in their effectiveness. As veteran mountain man Jeremiah Collins wrote in 1887, "A man's shelter is his life in the mountains. Build it right, and it will keep you warm through the worst storms nature can send. Build it wrong, and it becomes your tomb." The simplicity of that statement belies the depth of knowledge behind it. The understanding of site selection, structural engineering, thermal dynamics, weatherproofing, emergency protocols, all integrated into comprehensive systems for maintaining life in conditions that actively threatened it. Your consciousness continues to fade, sleep coming on more strongly now. The fire pops softly, a comforting sound that has accompanied human sleep for countless generations. The buffalo robes hold your body's heat close, creating a microclimate of warmth despite the sub-zero temperatures outside. In this moment, suspended between wakefulness and sleep, there's a profound connection between past and present. The mountain men of the 1800s and you now. using the same principles, the same materials, the same techniques to survive the same unforgiving environment. That continuity across time speaks to something essential about human adaptation and resilience. The specific challenges may change, but the core requirements for survival remain constant. Shelter, heat, water, food, and the knowledge to secure them in whatever environment we find ourselves. Sleep deepens, your breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the fire's gentle crackling. Your last conscious thoughts are of gratitude for the knowledge passed down that keeps you alive night after night, for the shelter that stands between you and the killing cold, for the skills that allow you to maintain that shelter through the worst weather the mountains can deliver. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but for now, wrapped in buffalo robes with the fire burning steadily, you've accomplished the mountain man's daily victory, surviving another day in one of Earth's most hostile environments through knowledge, preparation, and respect for the forces of nature. As you sleep, the snow begins to fall again outside, soft flakes drifting down in the darkness. Inside, the temperature remains stable, the shelter systems working as designed to maintain the bubble of habitability that makes survival possible. This is the legacy of the mountain men, not just techniques for building shelters, but comprehensive systems for creating and maintaining life-sustaining conditions in environments that would otherwise prove fatal. Their knowledge, earned through generations of harsh experience, remains relevant even in our modern world so removed from the direct survival challenges they faced. And now, as you rest comfortably in your own bed, far from the harsh mountain winter, perhaps there's something valuable in remembering these pioneers of survival. Their resourcefulness, their self-reliance, their intimate understanding of natural systems, all qualities that might serve us well even in our technology-cushioned present. The mountain men's shelters were more than just protection from the elements. They were expressions of human ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience in the face of extreme challenges. They stand as testaments to our capacity to survive and even thrive in conditions that seem impossibly hostile. As your own consciousness drifts towards sleep, cushioned by modern comforts the mountain men could scarcely imagine, perhaps there's comfort in knowing that the same human ingenuity that allowed them to survive Rocky Mountain winters continues to find solutions to the challenges we face today, different in nature, but no less requiring our creativity, knowledge, and determination. Sleep well, knowing that you carry within you the same capacity for resilience that allowed the mountain men to face the deadliest blizzards and emerge with stories to tell, stories that, like yours, eventually find their way to peaceful sleep.